What's up, everybody? I'm Richard.
And I'm Shawn.
And we are speaking the language of anniversary mance.
Bronniversary. So, Richard, you and I on this journey of podcasting have made it. We have made it 5 years.
Wait a minute. Did you say we mated? We've mated?
We mated. Yeah, we mated. And our love, when one podcaster loves another podcaster, they get together and they make sweet, sweet, passionate recordings. And out comes a podcast, baby. And Richard, we have done 260 of those. Which actually, you know what? When you count it, I've probably done this more than I've had sex.
Oh, easily.
Yeah. Because, I mean,
Easily.
This is weekly. You know, sex is like what? Once every other moon cycle?
I mean, ish.
Something like that. I don't know. Marriage is weird.
I know,
pod
right?
marriages, they're not weird. So, Richard,
until you make it weird.
The first time we celebrated our Bronniversary, we kind of went through a bunch of the stuff that happened. So if you want to kind of look at that, it's our 52nd episode. But what I thought would be kind of cool, because we don't really pat ourselves on the back too much. I mean, you look at like what we've done. We started back in June of 2014. There we go. My number's messed up. 2014.
Yeah.
You know, you and I, we were buddies. We were starting to kind of drift apart, and we said, nope, we got to do this thing. So we stick together weekly and kind of, you know, just don't let that friendship break. And this, what I thought would be cool for our 5-year anniversary is to go back in time and listen to our very first episode we ever did, which was our episode 0, Did We Just Become Best Friends? Which we kind of talk a little bit about how we became friends and what it was. But I think it'd be interesting to go back and listen and probably mostly mock that very first episode.
Right, because I have a feeling I'm going to instantly regret this.
I've listened to it before, and you don't sound too different. Like, we definitely sound very kind of cautious in our talking. Like, we don't feel like we should be talking into mics.
Yeah.
The biggest thing from this, you'll probably notice this when we upload it, because I still haven't figured out how to fix it. You're only going to hear this episode. I think it's Richard's voice in this episode from back in 2014 coming from one ear. I think it's the left ear. So just be prepared for that. But Richard,
Because I didn't understand how technology works.
But it was an episode 0. It was our test episode, and I think we did pretty well on getting it out there. And
yeah, why did we put this on the internet again?
Yeah, good point. Well, I mean, you know,
why do we put this on the internet at all?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I mean, it's kind of like masturbating, where like this is our version of masturbating. It's just for us, although it's together, so actually it goes back to our sex metaphor.
So we're like audio cam girls. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for each other. It's like, hey, want to make me laugh? Yeah. Oh, I want to make you laugh so hard.
Get those gold coins, everybody.
Richard, I guess, we'll probably kind of get emotional maybe towards the end of it, but do you have anything you want to kind of throw out there before we jump into this very first episode we did?
I remember little to nothing about it.
Oh.
I haven't listened. I honestly have not listened to this in years. So,
about every 1 year, like I think our first year, like second, third, and fourth year, I download this one to give it a listen.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean,
I do not.
This is the equivalent of our wedding video to me. You know, it's our first one. It's kind of
I don't watch like that either.
But well, if you have nothing you want to throw in right now, let's cue it up. What we'll do is, you know, we'll start it right away. So if you'll hear it as we put it on here, and we'll just stop it whenever we have any thoughts. So if you have something you want to chime in on, just yell stop, and we'll discuss it. So
bear in mind, this is only 30 minutes.
Yeah, 30 minutes and 10 seconds. So we'll kick this off, Richard, in 3, 2, 1. And our intro music plays. Same intro music.
It's the same intro music. Should we ever change that?
I've always thought about that. So let's stop it.
Okay.
So the intro music, we bounced back and forth on what we should do. Like we went out and found it. I think we had like 3 or 4 different songs that we kind of liked. But we picked this one because it was Daredevil. And that's like when Daredevil is starting to kick in and be a big thing. But I wanted something a little grungy, a little hardcore, like you jump right in. But I wanted something quick too, because some podcasts have like an intro song that lasts like a minute and a half.
Yes, not only that, it's an intro. First, it's like 5 minutes of ads, and then it's intro music.
Oh yeah, you're like, all right, fast forward,
and then whoever's doing the who's ever doing the podcast, if they have some sort of celebrity status, they usually so you get like a minute and a half of ads, then you'll get like a 45-second intro, and then you'll get another 2.5 to 3 minutes of where they're going to be, like upcoming dates for whatever. So you really don't get to the actual show until you're like 6 minutes in.
Yeah, in our shows we had a little bit of bumpers, like once we got with Pod Bros, where it'd be like a maybe a 30-second little like, hey, this is we're part of the Pod Bros network. But we always made sure it was quick. Like this is like right now we're like 7 seconds into this first episode, and right away we're going to kick into us talking. And that was a conscious decision on our end, because you and I both, I think, hate whenever you have 3 minutes of garbage at the beginning of a show. It's like we want to jump in, get in the intro music, because just so you know, oh, yep, I'm playing that, and then right away, boom, we're into what we're talking about.
We don't want you to skip forward.
Yeah. So, but we've
You'll
talked
skip
about
forward when we start talking and be like, this sounds stupid.
I'm not even going to finish. Delete. It's kind of like sex with our wives. They're like, hey, this isn't worth it. I'm rolling over and go to bed.
I know. I always hate it when when you're in the middle of it and they scream, delete. And you're like, wait.
I know. Like, babe, this has been 6 months. Like, we got to do this, right? The moon cycles. All right. Well, I'm going to hit play again right now. And I'm Shawn.
And we are speaking the language of bromance. So that intro hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't. And that was not written down. So I remember we were doing this via phone call at this point. And I remember, so I've thought about this numerous times. Like, whenever I hear that intro, I cringe, because I'm like, and I'm Shawn. Because my wife and I started a podcast about 3 or 4 weeks before we did ours, because you and I talked, like, we'll get into it in here. We'll talk about it, but we decided, hey, we're going to do this podcast, and we're going to take like 3 or 4 weeks to get everything together and go. But I was so excited. I'm like, hey, Tiffany, can you and I just do one together? So we can kind of work out some of the kinks and kind of like see how stuff works. Because you didn't have a mic yet, and I was going to get you the mic. It was going to be a couple of weeks. And so Tiffany and I started one called How Was Work, which did not last very long, like 8 episodes. Then we tried it again 3 years later, and it got to like 20 episodes.
Hey.
But I remember when we did this, like, I felt like I was the pro. I'm like, oh, I got this. Richard has never done this in his life. I've got this. And so, like, that was kind of like my confident, like, and I'm Shawn. I always cringe because I'm like, that was such like a stupid, like, not really D-baggy kind of thought, but pretty darn close to it. And I imagine you.
Is it because you think you chime in like the ladies' man? You're like, and I'm Shawn.
I think so, yeah. It's like, I'm a seasoned pro.
Yeah.
But I imagine you.
Let's start this off. I'm going to make love to this microphone.
I imagine you, like, when you say it, because you're kind of like, and you're like, I just imagine you stretching, being like, and we're speaking the language of bromance. Like, you almost have to, like, stretch it out of yourself. Because, again, I think we both felt like we were kind of tool bags for doing it. Like, it was weird to talk. Like, now it's pretty natural. Like,
felt like.
260 times.
Feel like.
Yeah. You still feel that way, though? It's second nature to me now. I don't even really notice it.
Is there, I guess if you're asking, is there a part of me that feels like the whole venture is silly to a degree? A little, because I mean, like, we sit here every week and we talk, and like, I try and make you laugh and you try and make me laugh, and it works. But I guess, we have done shows in front of people, and those times I get slightly nervous, but when it's this, then I don't, because I genuinely think that no one is listening.
I think
like any sort of performance that I give out is for an audience of one.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I think if we did more like live audience stuff, we'd probably get more used to it. And you have to think the ones that we've done, there's been, when we did our live podcast at Kansas City's Comic-Con, there was probably 20 or 30 people there.
Yeah.
When we did the co-show this past year at the Planet Comic-Con in Kansas City, there's probably about the same 20 or 30 people there.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we're speaking the language of bromance. That kind of came off the cuff too. Like we didn't write that part down.
No,
it was just
I didn't write anything down.
It'll be we kind of figured what we wanted the ending to be, but as far as the intro, it was just going to be what it was going to be. But all right, will you kick it right back in? We're 22 seconds into this, Richard. We've already got lots of information to pass back and forth. All right, play now.
This is our first foray into the digital medium.
I love that you said digital medium there.
So basically, I mean, we've talked about doing something like this for
why
a long
digital
time.
medium?
I
don't know.
mentioned it in passing once, like years ago, and then I graduated college and moved away, and then you brought it up to me, and I think just finally, like,
you
we
sound
got
sad.
The motivation.
I'm gonna pause it real quick.
Yeah.
That was my thought there as I was going through this. That was me being like, okay, I'm gonna tee it up for Richard, and you're like, this is our first, digital foray, and there's a little pause there, and it's like, oh, don't worry, I got this. And go into this whole spiel of, basically, we have talked about doing this for a long time.
Are you mansplaining right now? Be like how I'm mansplaining to the audience?
I'm podsplaining to you, Richard, in this episode.
So you see what this is it's like a blog, but with talking.
Richard, this was 2014. Mansplaining and podsplaining didn't exist.
Yes, they did. We just didn't call it that.
All right, I'm going to hit play again.
Do this. Let's go forward with this.
It's one of those things that we kind of bounced back and forth. Like, you were like, oh, we should do this. And I'm like, that's a great idea. And then we'd forget about it. And then, like, about 6 months later, I'd be like, oh, we should do this. Hey, that's a great... And then you'd be like, oh, that's a great idea. And then we played tennis with it.
I'm very quiet.
It's just something, I don't think either one of us, like, we had motivation at the wrong time. Like,
I like
have motivation.
Pause it there. Like, I like what we talked about. Like, we played tennis, we ping-ponged it back and forth. Very much like kind of what we've done. All right, playing again.
Yeah.
Do it, but you're kind of like, yeah, let's do it, and then just kind of fall off.
Exactly.
And then vice versa. And I think this time it's kind of like I'm at a point in my life where, like, I've tried a few different things. I tried programming on my own. I tried, just doing some kind of art writing type stuff. And
I think that's very true. We've really kind of been able to get into this
sooner,
stuff at this point in time. Like, I always wonder if we tried to do this sooner, if we would have been able to do that or not.
Game a lot. Play Dungeons and Dragons,
okay, so
movies.
where are you at? Pause it right here.
I'm at a minute 40.
You're where?
Minute 40.
Minute 40. Okay. So I'm not sure at this, like, I'm not sure what vibe we were trying to go for, but honestly, at this point, to me, it has a very NPR kind of vibe.
Yeah, I get that.
With and not really so much with the topic or with what we're talking about, but just our tone, like the way we are speaking. Like, are we both trying to channel like Roman Mars at this point, or what?
I mean, it's the whole, like, even when I put like a mic in front of my dad and stuff, his tone kind of changed just because it's something you're not used to. And I think once we kind of got to the point where we ignored the mics and just kind of became ourselves more, like, I listen to this. It's not Richard and Shawn. It's Richard and Shawn on mics, whereas post like episode probably like 27, 28, I think that gets more into like, that's Richard and Shawn. And I think you settled into it a lot quicker than I did, but that helped me sink into it.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay.
I hit play again.
I just like, I'm listening to it and like, I'm just getting this very NPR
the last
vibe.
Time that we were gaming, you showed up a little bit later, so you didn't get to play a character. I was DMing at the time.
I like that we have like decent life experience.
I
Like that
And
was
as
5
I
years
leave,
ago.
I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't leave 'cause
We're
Tiffany-
seasoned
Tiffany's
veterans.
My wife, and so I was like, well, I got to get back home. And like, I stopped and like, Rich is here, and I haven't talked to him in months.
Terrible
I was
joke.
like, how you doing? You're like, yeah, good. We get like a 10-minute conversation in, and I'm like, this sucks. Like, we just don't have the opportunity to talk much.
Exactly.
And it's one of those things, you know, you call when I'm busy, I call when you're busy. Actually, I think you do more calling than I do.
When
But
you
just
said
doing
this sucks,
just
were you
kind of
referring to the
like, all right,
conversation?
this day
Yeah,
we
conversation
sit down
sucked.
and
I'm like, hey, this
BS about
conversation
whatever's,
stinks. We
you
should
know,
do a
on our
podcast.
Force each other.
I hate talking to you. You know what we should do? We should do it on microphones. That way it could be even more awkward.
I get inspired.
Fantastic.
I
Great idea.
Smith, where he's like, you know what? He's like, he has his own show, and it was basically a way.
I'm gonna pause it here where we're talking about Kevin Smith. So
It's like,
I remember, like, when his podcast first came out in 2007, I think I was listening to like ESPN podcasts and stuff like that, and you really got me into Kevin Smith. So did my buddy JJ. And so at that point, I'm like, well, what if this dude's got a podcast? And he had just started his like maybe 6 weeks before that. And so I really was an early adopter to that. And I remember like 3 or 4 months into it, I'm like, oh my God, like Richard, you and I should do this because it's just like what we do back here in the kitchen. We make stupid jokes and make each other laugh. You're like, that'd be amazing. And then like the thing we did there is we started talking to people about it. And the people I talked to were like, that's a stupid idea. I'm like, well, but we'll put it on the internet. Well, who's going to listen to it?
Nobody's going to listen to it. It's on the internet.
Richard and I will listen to it. And so I think that really kind of like squashed it. And you didn't really get into the podcast stuff until a few years after that, right? Because I remember trying to get you hooked into it.
Yes, that's true. And it wasn't really, I guess in my head, it seemed like a very intangible thing. Like, I don't even know what it would entail.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point.
To do that.
And what sucks
because you're talking 2007.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
I mean, I had some equipment. I had a laptop. I didn't have a microphone, like an actual microphone.
Yeah, I think we could have done it because, like, what I didn't understand is how do you get your stuff up there? But if I would have been smart enough to do a little Google searching, like Libsyn was around then, and that would have simplified it a ton. And I always kind of wonder because I don't know if we would have been funny enough back then or not, but you know, you think there weren't that many podcasts back then. You know, if you're a podcast out there, you pretty much were in the top 10 right away.
Yeah. I always have that wonder, like, what if this would be anniversary 12 instead of 5?
I wonder do you think if we would have started back then, we would have kept up like we have these last 5 years where we've done it every week?
I don't know.
I kind of feel like we're in spots so another thing that was in the back of my mind when we started this episode 00 was, okay, we're starting this brand new thing. We're going to try to do it weekly because we wanted to be consistent. You know, we're going to bank like 2 or 3 episodes. But in the back of my head, I was like, well, how long is this really going to last?
Right.
You know, me and you. Like, is it at some point you're going to be like, yeah, I'm just not feeling it. Let's just skip this week. And it's like the gym, you know, 6 years go by. It's like, what about that podcast thing we said we were going to do? Didn't we get to episode like 12? We should do that again. Yeah, we should.
You know, and when you think, and for me, I think that was also a reason that I was hesitant to start it, because I felt that if I started it, I was going to commit to it. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't sure if I wanted that kind of commitment and what it entailed. I don't know if I wanted that kind of commitment at that point.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because we talked about it then, and it was kind of, I think we're both kind of in that same boat. Like 3 or 4 years later, you had mentioned it because you got into podcasting really heavy. Mm-hmm. And I kind of fell out of it a tiny bit. And I remember you talking to your wife and saying, she's like, well, what would you call your podcast? You'd be like, we call it My Buddy. I don't know if you remember that at all.
No, I don't remember that at all.
Do, My Buddy. Do.
Oh my god.
So see again, maybe it was the podcast gods putting a little bit of a stuffle on us, being like, why don't you guys wait a little bit? 2014
Fix
will be
your fucking
year.
name. You chodes.
And then I come up with Fight the Yeti, and it's like, But then you brought Language of Bromance to the table. It's like, all right, let's let these guys do it now. Right,
I think that was actually, again. I think I've said this before, but I think Language of Bromance was my wife's idea.
I think so,
because it was. Okay, she's nodding in the affirmative at me. She's like, yeah, it fucking was.
She's like, and you know what the other thing I said was? You should stop doing that show. I said that 4.5 years ago.
You fucking chode.
She just wants royalties, doesn't she?
Yeah, you just want my money, don't you? Again, she's nodding in the affirmative.
I'm gonna hit play again. I'm at 254.
I'm a man. I have feelings.
And it's
I'm not just a cash cow.
Force myself to sit down with my best friend and talk about what
Here for your fucking amusement.
And I'm like, why?
Anyway, but no, she came up with the idea
I know
because she was saying something.
miles away, and
Because she was the one that always mentioned that we have a bromance.
for me, it's going to be
Oh, yeah.
5 years.
I think that was the first time I'd ever heard that term.
Audio record of like,
Yeah, I know you always said it's like, you're like, I want to do something with bromance.
Yeah, he just had
Or maybe
it
she
awesome.
did.
It was,
And I know
he was sitting down talking
I'm
to
at
somebody.
3:30 right
He's
now.
like,
I'm going to pause it. I remember
Okay.
talking to Tiffany about this because her and I just got married the year before. And I told her the title. I'm like, oh, what do you think of Language of Bromance? And she's like, well, I mean, would you say you and Richard have a bromance? And I paused and I was like, well, if Richard and I were both attracted to dudes, we'd probably date each other and get married. And she's like, well, bromance is probably fitting then.
I guess that's it.
I'm at 3:30 and hitting play.
like a
All
forum
right.
type setup. And he was just saying, like, he's going to have these conversations with his parents. I mean, we're going to have these conversations now where, 15
That's
years
cool.
from
I mean,
now,
we did talk about doing
you'll be
that,
talking
the
with
audio
your kids, or I'll
records.
be talking with my kids or somebody I know and be like, well, it's one time me and my best friend sat down and just BS'd about this, brand new movie that came out. Instead of just being able to talk about it.
And that's what we're doing now. We're going back and be like, oh, remember that thing. Remember that thing.
And it's just going to kind of allow for that timelessness to go on.
Exactly.
So it's
I like
interesting you
that
bring
in
up
here
Kevin
we
Smith.
talk
So,
about, like, I didn't have a
I was
kid at
kinda
this
thinking
point.
about,
I mentioned, like,
Yeah.
sometime in the future, my kid will be able to listen to these, which
I
is
was
kind of
thinking about,
cool.
Like, the first time that I ever kind of saw you, and I was curious what you thought, when you saw me, like when our eyes met and we had that, did we just become best friends moment?
But then you realize, oh, now I have to wait for my kid to be older before they can.
He listens to him now, actually. He, whenever he sees our logo, he goes, that's Richard, and that's you, Dad.
First time we met, I remember. At least this is
My son listens sometimes, and it makes me slightly nervous because then I remember what we talk about, and I'm like, does he need to hear this shit coming out of my mouth right
Like,
now?
Dad, that's all jokes, right? Mom really doesn't peg you, does she? That's right, son.
And of course, I chimed in. You were big into horror.
Why are you waddling?
You were really. Big
Oh, it was another moon
Yeah, back then,
cycle.
that's like I was on like bloodydisgusting.com like every day, like what's the next scary movie?
I'm gonna
coming
pause it
out?
at 5 minutes because right now we're talking about how we kind of like first became friends. And I always love telling people about this. Like, oh my God, do you know about Last House on the Left? They're like, no. I'm like, oh, well, you're in for a treat. Let me tell you. And I share this story. I'm hitting play again at 5 minutes.
Okay.
Film to die for, like you were trolling those pretty hard, and I said,
I would say that was your defining quality that I would recall about you at that point.
Oh, I was
like,
totally
Last
in,
House on
like
the Left.
just completely in on horror movies. I'm not as much anymore.
Remake. So we're talking about the original. Last
Well, no,
House
because then they came out with comic book movies, and then it was,
That's true.
It was a weird movie. Like it's to me, like I watch it and it feels like a snuff movie. Like you ever. Like,
What's nice about that? That's got me into the original Hills Have Eyes too, which I really liked.
yeah.
You and I went and saw that with your
I
wife.
found this,
No, we saw the remake.
Yeah, the remake.
Puts the
Yeah.
reel on into these two people, and they're just like cutting this girl up.
She didn't like it.
What is happening?
Yeah. I was like, oh, they did the red screen at the end. And she's like, I don't get it. I'm like, and the original. She's like, shut up. Aw.
To me, that film reel is what the entirety of Last House on the Left was. Like, all sorts of crazy shit happened.
I love that I watched that with my mom and a girl I was hanging out with at the time.
The
Yeah,
dog gets
why-
set on fire at one point.
Why? How did you think that would be okay?
I didn't realize there was going to be a chick biting a dude's dick off. If you would have led with that, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to watch this by myself, not with my mom and this girl.
With no pants.
I promise you.
So,
Yeah,
can
so I
you
just
do
remember-
that
yeah,
but
you
without the
mentioned that,
biting part?
And I was like, okay, like I said, I was really into like stuff, and it's like, how messed up could it really be? I mean, really. So I go out to Blockbuster, I think had it. I rent the movie. There's a girl I was just kind of hanging out with at the time.
I still
So I went back
recommend
to
that
my
movie to
house. My
people.
mom
I'm like,
was
you
up,
want to see
so
something
yeah.
screwed up.
And so we're watching.
Well, yeah,
it,
and people are like, oh
spoilers
my
if
God, that's
nobody's
so. It's
seen
like,
it.
yeah, you know the dude who did Scream,
Like
Nightmare on Elm
2/3 of the
Street.
way in, I'm like, oh,
That was his
man,
first
I can't
movie.
wait to talk
Was
to
that his
Rich
first
about
movie or
this.
second
This is
movie?
Fucked up.
That was his
First
first
feature,
one.
right?
And all of a sudden, there's a scene
Yeah.
where the mom takes this lady down, or that takes this guy down to the pool, and she starts, going down on it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, we
this
just
is
spoiled
weird.
it before we spoiled it.
The movie's like 30 years
Because
old.
basically
Yeah.
they were trying to kill their daughter or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And she ends up biting his dick off, and I'm like, all right,
Oh, that's
pull out the
sexy.
phone, call
Yeah,
work,
down at the
ring, I'm
pool.
Like, yeah, is Rich there? Like, what the fuck did you just make me watch?
That's exactly that's the call I remember verbatim because it was in the same day I was like, oh, you should see this movie, and you were like, oh, okay.
I love what I called you. We were like not like great friends, like we were more of acquaintances at that point. Because it was
Right.
a couple months before you introduced me to like D&D.
What
and-
possessed you to call me?
I'll push pause on that. I think it was some at 7:44. So it was a really fucked up scene, and like all the stuff had led up. Like, oh, like it's gonna be cool to talk to Rich about this when I go to work in a couple of days. But when that happened, like I was like, I just got to call him. And I don't know if that's like in a subliminal way. I'm like, this is a guy I want to hang out with. If he's into this kind of stuff, like he laughs and we seem like we have the same humor. Because before this moment, you were the manager in the back of the kitchen. And
Right.
I remember I've talked to some other people about this, not this specifically, but we didn't know each other very well. And I have this thing where and I'm not saying you did this, I'm just saying this was kind of my first okay, introduction to you. But I don't do well with people who kind of like power trip. Like people who get a little bit of like managerial type stuff, or they're a team lead and it goes right to their head. That
Oh,
stuff,
yeah, I
like,
gotcha.
I don't respond to that at all.
No,
and-
I don't either.
I remember you had just come back from training, and we're at the restaurant. They're kind of going through like some of the new menu stuff, and you kept chiming in on what there was, which what you should have done. That was your job because you were in the back of the kitchen and you knew the
Right.
stuff. But I took that kind of quickly as like, oh, this is a dude that's like just wants some power. And
You knew it.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, like, oh, is this gonna be awkward, isn't it? Because we had a couple of those anyway.
Yep. And that's why I say my name first in the intro.
But once I got to talk to you about it, I realized that wasn't the case. Because where we worked at, like, if you were the closing server, you had to like make sure everybody did their side work and all that other stuff. There was some people who lived for that. Like they wanted to bust your balls. Like, nope, your salt's not all the way up. It's like,
Yeah.
just go away.
This is my life. This is my life. I'm feeling salt.
But so that was kind of like my first like, oh my gosh. But when I saw like when we talked about that and I saw that, I was like, no, I've got this guy completely wrong. Like he's gonna be a friend for life. So I'm at 7:44 hitting play.
Hey, how's it going? It's Shawn, or hello. It was, what the fuck did you make me watch? And I'm like, it's fucked up, isn't it?
You called work because you didn't have my number.
Yeah, I didn't have your number at that point. That's actually probably why I did
It's
it.
worse. And you're like, no, it can't. I'm like, it does. That's my earliest memory, was getting a phone call. I remember I was at work and it was the middle of the dinner rush, and I just
All right, got to go back to work.
phone call
Bye.
about Last House on the Left.
I forgot all about that. That was probably one of the funniest things ever.
I imagine like your heart probably sank. Like, Richard, somebody's on the phone for you, and it seems urgent.
Both of us.
A little bit.
Oh God, what happened to the kids? What's wrong with my wife?
It would get
a little bit. Well, because at that point, my son was like,
well, I'll close. I'm already here, so what's the point of
less than
leaving? It's 10
2, younger
o'clock.
than 2.
Gotcha.
And so we'd stay there till 1 or 2, and then we started.
I probably
getting
call him
into,
like, "Hey, Richard, this
watching
is Shawn." You're
movies
like, "Who?"
after work.
The guy you watched last house on the
I
left.
think I had just seen Clerks, and kind of get on like the Kevin Smith and just that kind of stuff. Is that you're like, oh well, here's his other movies, and I hadn't seen any of them. So we kind of started a View Askew kind of marathon. We started with Mallrats.
Oh, those good times.
And kind of watched all those.
I'll pause it right here at 9 minutes. So, I look fondly back at those times, and you think about, I was in college at the time and lived in the dorm, but I didn't really have a lot of friends there because it was a smaller college. And if you didn't play sports, or didn't do any kind of the other activities, you kind of didn't really have a group of friends you ran with. And my roommate at the time was on the football team, so he was kind of had his own thing to do. But this really just kind of gave me something to do that wasn't destructive to my, college career.
Yeah.
You think about like
Makes sense.
We worked till what, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And
Yeah, if it was a weekend, it was usually about like 1. And it was usually about 1 before I was usually there till about 1:30.
And you've talked about like kitchens, like usually after hours, it's like late at night. What's there to do besides go to bars or drink or just do things that are not good for you? And instead, you and I are like, let's watch movies.
God, I really fucking dated myself at that point, didn't I?
Was it a VHS or was there a DVD player back there?
No, it was DVD. Okay. That's how I did it because, so the place we worked at, there was a bunch of TVs and there was a couple big screens. So there was a DVD player in the office, and that DVD, you could put in a DVD and play it on any of the TVs. So what I would do is I'd just put in like whatever, and then just play the whatever DVD on the TVs out front. And usually I did it like if I was doing like the cash drawers and doing the deposit, everything. So there was a TV in the office too. So I would sit there and be, closing everything up, and then also simultaneously watching a movie.
Yeah, usually at that point I would have had whatever I made for dinner. I'd be sitting out there eating it, watching it, and then 15, 20 minutes later you'd come out, or you'd count some stuff out there, do whatever, and finish the movie and call it a night. And nobody was really in the wiser because we didn't do anything bad, really.
No, nobody cared.
So 9 minutes, hit and play.
Movie time at work.
Yeah, and then we usually had more people. You see, I was the manager at the time, so usually like we'd lock the doors, when it was closing.
Late night movie time,
stuff like that. So usually it was just like, people were like, "Oh, I don't really want to go."
We had people until they started turning 21. You kind of saw them like starting to fall off.
Yeah,
we'd have like 4 or 5 maybe. Then it's like, oh wait, so and so's going to the bar. Bye guys.
Well, and then it got to a point where people started drinking at the place.
Yeah,
and my boss didn't care so long as they paid for everything. So what? Yeah. So they pay for everything, and then I'd just leave the cash for the next day. And it was going fine until I think one night, like it ended up being like a $250 bar tab. And I mean, it all got paid. It wasn't anything nefarious. Like nobody was stealing drinks. But like, I was like, holy shit. I was like, everybody drank $250 worth of booze.
Yeah,
I think that was the night I went out on a date and showed up, and I was wearing a polo. And our buddy Kevin's like, "Hey, what's up, Harry Potter?" This is my nice shirt.
So you'd be, playing like Fat Lip.
I know, for a night on the town.
You kind of do a jump and you look around and you're in the back doing stuff.
On video games. So we started playing.
Oh, yeah. Then it evolved from movies to Guitar Hero.
Plugging away on this plastic guitar.
Because that's when that was a thing.
Oh, yeah.
That it's really not anymore.
No, I remember I was debating on getting a PS3 or that, and I bought the whole like system for Guitar Hero first for my PS2. But I was
Yeah.
like, hey, so like how difficult would it be to get a PS3? Like, is it going to be a couple months because it just came out? He's like, well, we got 3 in the back right now. Like, you have 3 right now? He's like, yeah.
Yeah, somebody
like, can I
recently
return this and buy
bought,
that?
a bunch of songs for Rock Band.
My
So they're
girlfriend
still
at the
putting
time
out
was pissed.
music and stuff that you can download and play.
Yeah, worth it.
So there's
Worth
still a
it.
market out
Although
there,
I didn't
but
play
I'm
it the
not
first
sure how
like
many
3
people
hours
play
I had
Yeah,
it. It
you
was
buy
Kevin
walk
and
in,
Dustin
buy a
at his
whole set
apartment.
cheap.
They were the ones playing it because I was trying to call her not to break up with me.
Okay, so let's see. So we did that.
Stupid.
I know. I wonder if you can even buy that now. Like, that was 5 years ago. Do you think you could buy one now?
Like a pawn shop.
pawn shop? You have to buy a
Yeah.
PS2 probably just to play
A
it.
third friend of ours.
Yeah.
is Kevin. Kevin.
Well, they have it. They have it at. They have Guitar Hero for PS3. I'm just saying, if you want to go get the actual guitar controller, you probably got to hit like a
yeah.
pawn shop
over there.
or like Goodwill. I bet they have them there.
Games. Or drinking, or both.
Yeah, his spot was kind of.
There was a lot of
downfall,
drinking at his
bit.
place.
There was like a little stretch where because
I wasn't really there that much.
much.
There's a handful of times. I think that was kind of
going out to bars. And
whenever
whatnot,
it kind of
so-
stopped being
there's
drinking at the
like a
bar we're
3-month
at, they
period
started
where
going to his
Mhm.
place because they could drink
Mhm.
weren't quite old enough to go out
at an age that they probably
But then
can't
they hit
drink
that
at a
gap where they
bar.
started going out and
True.
kinda
But then
stopped
once they
going to,
started turning 21, they started going to
Kevin's,
other
'cause everyone
bars
was
and stuff in the
going
area.
Right.
I lived at his place for like 2 months. I don't know if you remember that.
And so that's kind of where we
I
continued
do.
the movie and video games. But then that's when you kind of introduced me to the world of gaming.
When he exposed me to my newest passion,
Crazy
gaming.
At a time. It's like when you meet a girl, you know. It's like, you know, this is me. This is the best of me, and then I'm going to show you the best of me plus a little that's not so great, and then you just kind of increment it. And then if
See, again, it still has that NPR quality,
Yeah,
I feel.
I'm
Or
positive
at least that's what I feel like I'm trying to go for.
Yeah, I get it.
little
I'm
bit of
pausing
time
at
to see what
13
you can
minutes.
take.
So I'm always curious when, and you may not remember, but do you remember at what point you're like, all right, so we're watching these movies. I kind of like this guy. I'm going to invite him to my gaming group, which actually didn't even invite me to your gaming group. You invited me to your house to play for your birthday for the first time.
Yeah, well, I think it was that. Because I know exactly why. It's because the game you were really into at the time was Elder Scrolls 4.
Yeah, Oblivion. I started
Oblivion.
picking that up. Yeah, no, yeah, I think that's right because Kevin got it. I played it a little bit, and it was coming out for PS3. I think like in
3.
a couple months. I think that's when
Yeah.
he kind of hooked me into. Oh well, you can do this.
I was like, well, if you're into this, I was like, maybe you're into this.
I
I was like, so you come over and you try this, and if you like it, then
and it was. I love how you got me exposed to it too because you were the DM, I guess, and we did Star Wars, which we talk about in this as well. Which I always look back fondly on that little time frame because it was like 2000.
that was good.
Oh God, it was probably like 2004. No, it was probably 2005. I think I figured that's when I
Yeah, that
started
sounds about
playing.
right.
You know, and it's. I mean, you think about that. Like, it's been 14 years. It's been off and on because there's been probably about 3 or 4 years I didn't play, but it's been like 15 years since I've been playing.
Yeah.
Ugh, man, love it. I'm at the 13.
And now look at you.
I
You're
know.
writing your own stuff.
I know. We talked about it a little bit here
Then you're
because-
like, I want to be a GM.
because this was the time frame where I started coming back to gaming because I kind of took a little time off, got married, and then decided, well, I want to come back and game some more. And I'd come back right as you were kind of bouncing back in and out of it with the group we play with. But I'm at the 13-minute mark, hit and play.
Like, oh no, I was kidding. I don't really game. That's weird.
No, I saw some. I experimented in college. You know,
So you say because like all I've ever heard about is like I knew like there was experience points and like there was levels, but whenever I thought of it, I thought it was like this big like official thing. It's like, oh, I have a level 22 rogue. Like I thought that was something official.
I think you felt like it was like World of Warcraft.
Yeah, I did. Because people always talk like, oh, I've got a level 20 yada yada. So I was like, oh, I don't want to fuck that up because I'll get kicked out of the D&D guild.
And so we're kind of
Then you show up and it's just a bunch of dick jokes and porn
It
and
was a good time. And then
Did we
you
do
bad
D&D?
pop culture
yeah, we did D&D
references.
the first
Okay.
time.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
was the,
But it's
the time when
amazing.
we were
It's
fighting
the
in some
best.
I love
area. And Lenny, there was like some green slime, so we ended up throwing fire on it.
Oh yeah, and then it enveloped somebody.
Yeah, and he's just
it
like,
enveloped somebody first, and then he's like, "Kill it with."
I remember
fire."
that. I remember somebody got pissed about that, and I was like, "Oh shit, is this what this is? You yell at people?"
And he's like, "Oh well."
Do you
so
hate
that's where
you?
he runs out of the room.
That's where I got introduced.
Stop it! I hate it when mom and dad fight.
That's where I got introduced to metagaming. So I was like, "You can't do that. That's metagaming." I'm like, "What's metagaming? I don't want to do that because I got yelled."
You introduced me to the fact that you guys did that like once a month on a Saturday, and it was basically a full day thing. And so I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it. You know, it'd be kind of fun."
I still feel we're
That's
so
where you
spoiled
introduced
with
me to
Dave's
the Star
basement
Wars
for gaming.
campaigns. And we did that for a long time. That was
In-
pretty much really my first.
In terms of
introduction to
like
gaming was the
time
Star Wars
or
campaign.
Time. It seems like they do it every month.
That went all
It's
Yeah.
a pretty good dedicated area. He's always had good TV setups so we
Yeah,
can
it
watch
went on
movies and
long.
stuff.
It was all through college. I think we just started doing more D&D stuff like about the time.
I mean, I've
moved
been with
away
groups
from
that have
town.
done it every week, not for as long, like a session,
didn't publish any.
but like 3-4 hours a night every week for like 6 months.
I think if you did that, you'd probably be more focused on the campaign. Because we kind of, we'll focus for like an hour, maybe an hour and a half, then dick around for 2, and then get back
Yeah.
into it. But I like that. It's like we always talked about it. It's like going out for drinks with the guys, except you're going to a basement with a bunch of dudes
And still drinking.
and drinking.
Middle of a campaign that I created myself, and it didn't take. I mean, it wouldn't. It was just like probably like.
You miss running games? You haven't run a game in a while.
I do.
I really like that campaign though.
Honestly, right now, I just wish I had time.
Mm.
Like that's the thing. Is just I feel like I like there's no time to prepare anything because it does take a huge degree of preparation.
Oh, yeah.
Even
To
if
do it
it's
well.
even if it's something that's published and written for you and everything's set up, you still have to read it and kind of figure out the beats in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was
Because
a
it's
blast. I
still
remember
you're
there's-
still
I kinda had an
creating
idea
a
with my
story,
characters that I
an
wanted to go the dark
open-ended
side
story,
right away.
an
Not right
like a
away, but
choose your own
that's what
adventure
I had
book.
them going towards. And so I just kept playing him as that character who was kind
I
of
remember
just,
some of that
scared
Star
and
Wars campaign, my
afraid of,
character going to the dark side.
just the
That was so much fun.
in that one, if you had so many dark
Which
side
I didn't
points,
come
you
up
could
with
lose
that
your character,
idea
and that was
until,
kinda
like-
cool to be able to take a character that we're playing.
I think there was something your character
as
did
part
that
of, like an NPC, like
popped that idea in my head. I was like, well, why don't I just take it?
Campaign.
And
Yeah,
then
I
it's
think I did
mine.
Force lightning like 2 or 3 times, and somebody's like, if you do that too much, you go to the dark side, right? And I was like, oh, what does that mean? That sounds like fun.
Thematic elements of the movies of this whole concept of.
We just talked about that last month, that game, and how the guy who lives there that would go to his house, Dave,
Yeah.
he fought Darth Vader. I think he took his lightsaber at some
yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Like he tried to Darth Vader tried to pull down a building on him. Like we just barely saved him. Like there's a lot of like memorable stuff from that.
Everybody
Yeah.
had fun with that. So, everybody had their hero moment, and there was.
Yeah, as you just mentioned there.
Really, really happy with that.
It was one of those scenarios where
I
it's
feel
like
so
everybody's
spoiled with
seen
that 'cause
the
that's
movies,
like
they
been
had-
probably
I don't
my
think I'd
favorite
seen the movies
campaign. It
at
was
that
my
point,
very
but,
first one.
That was a good time.
you just kind of
Man.
had a knowing of like this is what Star Wars is, whereas D&D you've got a bunch of different you've got
So that's how
Lord of the
that's
Rings,
that's
Game of
if I
Thrones,
if I have any
everywhere.
reflective thought, it would
But
be
really, Star
if you
Wars
got
is
some
kind of
friends,
one canon.
throw together
So you
throw
have
together a pen and
solid
paper
idea
game.
of what Star Wars is.
Well, plus I think it's also, like I said, I mean, to me,
I still think this episode does a good job of encompassing how our friendship kind of started and grew. Because the
Yeah.
gaming, I think, helped a ton. Because when we first started gaming together, we still didn't know each other great. But in that environment, it's non-work. It's totally out of it. It's a full 12-hour day. And really kind of, helped us get to know each other even that much more.
Yeah.
It gave us something to bond. I mean, we worked at a sports bar, and you're not a big sports guy. I was a little bit of a sports guy.
I
This
was
was kind
not.
of a common area that we could both kind of like talk about.
Yeah.
And lead into a bunch of other stuff too.
Different than every other Joe Schmo that walks out of the cantina, and everybody kind of it kind of got into not really a metagame sense where it was asking questions of the actual players, but it really most of the guys we game with, they're not big role players. it's usually, let's go in.
That's true. It's a very hack and slashy group.
Yeah, for sure.
Grab the loot and let's move on to the next room. But everybody really.
I think with that one though, it really gave us that hook. Well, especially when my character went to the dark side. It's like, oh, we know who we have to fight now. And I use that to my campaigns now. I try to make something very much like you're going after maybe this item, and here's your bad guy that you're going to have multiple interactions with.
To me, that's what made him such a great villain.
I think that was the thing that I liked about it the most was the villain.
I think the group
because I felt like the villain was,
I'd probably say that's one of the first campaigns where you knew who the villain by name.
Usually, because usually your main villain is is somebody. It's usually just like a big tough dude.
Yeah,
it's like the boss. It's like the boss at the end of at the end of a Double Dragon level. Just a big guy that you just punch a bunch until he's dead. But this one, there's actually a history and there's a personal connection.
Because I think that was actually there's a few nights where there wasn't a ton of fighting, but it was still pretty exciting. I mean, everybody seemed to get into it, and I don't think anybody really wanted to quit. I think they wanted to keep continuing, but there just wasn't that material for us to do that.
Right. And
I feel like our like you mentioned NPR, but our monotone in this is just completely different. Like sometimes whenever I think we're too tired, maybe we kind of fall back into that. But
yeah.
But again, at this point too, we didn't even know what this podcast was going to be.
Anticlimactic.
No, that's true. At this point, we're just. I think we're just talking and trying to fill up space.
Yeah. I'm glad it worked out the way it did, but I was concerned. I guess I'm concerned now, thinking back on it, that it could have just been so what happened this week with you, Richard? Which I'm glad it kind of went the way it did, where it's more of a a parody comedy type thing.
Like that's what everybody loves to do, though. Because you get an idea for a character. I think you guys had a few D&D characters where you had above like epic level.
It goes back to this gaming thing. It's like creating these characters and taking them on adventures. Frontier Leo.
Doing from the experience that you've had, it's like, okay,
Lewis and Clark, finding mastodons, all kinds of great stuff.
Yeah.
I know these feats I want, and it just helps kind of break it up.
So is that what we're doing? It's just all story creation.
I think so, a little bit.
It does.
So when you get to that point, you're like, okay, well, I kind of want to play something different. I want to play a different character.
That's true. It does take a long time to get to level 20.
It does.
I do this differently. I do this differently.
So at this point, are we just like, are we doing? Is this going to be a gaming podcast? Is that?
It's interesting to think about that because our 5th episode, you jumped into D&D 5th edition,
Right. Yes. And I think that's just because. Okay. I'm up pause it at at 22:08.
Okay.
So even when we started at 00, even when we started doing the show, I had absolutely no idea what the show was going to be. So, and I think I might have even brought it up, like, what the fuck are we going to talk about? And then you're like, oh, well, we'll just talk about like how we met. I'm like, okay, well, that works. Like, and so based on that, I was thinking, okay, well, maybe, it's like, maybe we're doing like this nerdy / gaming thing where we talk about like, games we played or games we want to play, or, at that point, Dungeons and Dragons was working on a 5th edition system, and I had gotten a hold of a playtest rule set, and so I was like, well, I guess we'll talk about that. So still didn't know, even 22 minutes into this first episode, I have no idea what the show is going to eventually become.
Yeah, I was just pulling up our first few episodes. I don't even think we knew at that point, because the next one we talk about, the Calvolution is Here, is the title of the episode. And I think we started talking about like the shark thing because I thought like, oh, we can talk about sharks. We can do all this other stuff. And we came up with like, well, what about all these cows? People die from cows more often. And the next episode, we talked about animals. We talked about the zombie bear thing.
Yeah.
But coming up in our third episode was something that's been kind of a staple since was one of our drafts. We did a villain draft.
And the draft thing was totally your idea.
Well, and to me, it was like, well, you know, because I think at this point, I thought we'd probably talk a lot about like what was the week in Shawn going to be? And I felt if we did kind of a draft, to just kind of like change it up a little bit, give kind of a, you know, something to just spice it up so it's not like, oh, because, you know, I started listening to a lot of indie podcasts at that point, and the ones that were, you know, in the week ofs, you're kind of like, well, why the fuck do I care about this person? You know, if it's Kevin Smith, you're like, oh my God, it's funny. Kevin Smith walked up a hill and almost died of a heart attack.
Yeah.
I got to listen to this.
And then he met Seth Rogen and they hung out and smoked weed. And then you're like, that. I'm like, my life is not that interesting.
I talk about jerking off in a hotel. It's weird and creepy. Kevin Smith does it, and it's comedy. Difference is there. So I thought the draft.
I mean, is that all in? I feel like that's more style than substance.
You said I had enough substance.
You know, I'm not getting into this right now. I'm not doing it. But I guess I'm just saying that, you know, okay. Like after 5 years, you can talk about jerking off, and
that's true.
It's not, you know, it doesn't seem creepy or weird.
Depending on who listens, it probably
because
is.
Then you're like, oh, I use one hand and then I switch hands.
That's a good point. We've had that conversation more than once. That's the thing about this is people, if somebody's listened from 00 all the way through, they know a lot about us.
Yeah, because we've mentioned multiple embarrassing things multiple times. Yeah,
but I do like the draft idea. I wasn't sure if it would last because my original idea was episodes 3 and 8 on evens. We would do drafts. So episode 3, episode 8, episode 23, episode 20.
Which ironically, since this is 00, the first two are on 3 and 03 and 09.
Yeah, that's right. I think we had to change that up or something. Or we didn't really finalize that. But when the other idea we had is that in the odd sections, so like, you know, episode maybe 12 and 13, we would do movie commentaries. And the one and only movie commentary we didn't go very well.
It didn't go very well. I don't think it did either. And I know exactly why. And here's why I feel is because we picked. So for the only movie commentary we ever did was Big Trouble in Little China. I feel like the first problem with that was you had never seen it. So this was your like first viewing of it. So you're not really talking a lot because you're trying to take in the information.
Yeah.
You're trying to take in the movie. Me, I've seen the movie umpteen times, but I still love it. So like I can sit and watch it no problem. But then I'm sitting here going, well, he hasn't seen it. So I need to be quiet at certain. Yeah, I can't spoil it. I need to be quiet at certain parts. So I'll just let him watch this, and then I'll comment on things after they happen.
Yeah, we've talked about doing a Burbs one. And I think that would be fun to watch it and then do like a Burbs commentary.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be interesting to pick a movie that we've both seen.
Yeah. And John's asked for that. So we at least have one listener asking us for that.
And we're both, and also, we're, you know, like, since we've both seen it, then it's okay to talk over it.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing, too, is like, well, I don't want to talk over the movie. It's a good movie.
Yeah, that's the other point. Because then it's going to be like, if we talk about something like, hey, who's this guy? He's like, he's been in like 30 minutes ago. I'm like, oh, yeah, we were talking. I missed it. But that was the first time we recorded in the same room, though. Because otherwise we'd been doing Skype. So that was kind of cool.
That's true.
All right, so we got about 8 minutes left in this first episode. So at 22:08, I'm hitting play.
I might squeeze in something else here or there, but I mean, I think you have a game going every week. This is kind of
whatever happened to that group? They just kind of
No. What was the group here? It kind of fell apart because we tried to play like in January. We missed because of weather, and then the next month nobody could do it, and then they just got busy.
Yeah.
But then I kind of fell out of it because whenever I came back to Quincy, I just kind of stopped doing that because Tiff and I were getting married, and then she got pregnant,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it kind of killed about a year.
You game till 2 a.m. And so you gotta see the parents by the time you
Which
leave.
it really
you're
wasn't
back
until
in town
this
by
past
6 or
August when
7,
Dave
and
texted
just
like,
kinda,
"Hey, we got game day." I'm
takes
like,
a
"Oh
whole
man, I
weekend,
wish I
which
could be
kinda
there." He's
makes
like,
it
"Well, somebody can
difficult
watch
to
your
get
kid,
relaxed
right?"
any-
I'm like,
Right.
"Yeah, my mom and
so I
dad can.
kinda stopped
This is a
going.
great idea."
Somebody can.
I started listening to that podcast again, and it just really just got that gaming, fire going again. And texted some guys at work. Was like, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this?" And they said, "Yeah, we'll give it a shot."
I do
Never
miss
played
GMing
before.
though. Like I said, I've got so far it's an 8 chapter. I got 50 pages written that I just sent you actually for a
Yeah.
Starfinder idea. And I really like it.
But all the guys seem to really
Just got to
like it. If you
get
guys
through this
can
current
like it,
campaign
get
we're
it
running,
keep
and
up again.
hopefully I can kick that one off.
That's awesome. And actually, like you don't do publish adventures.
Yeah, we are talking about that.
Create your own. Which I mean, I haven't had it.
You haven't run.
I've had
You
a
haven't
chance to
ever
create
run a
my own.
published adventure.
No, mine
They've
are
all been your
homebrews.
own.
I like that better just because
I mean, it's
I've read some of the pre-gen ones, and
Uh-huh.
I worry too much that they really make it too vague.
I don't. Do,
So you almost have to
do
read through it
actually
and make up your own
use
story
any
anyway.
pull thing?
You do. I mean, you read it and then just kind of fill in the gaps.
Yeah, which isn't terrible, but I've started getting the Starfinder adventure paths to kind of maybe take some of their
Well, for the
ideas
most
and
part,
run with
the,
it.
The city's an actual city.
Yeah.
And I got the published book on that.
But the
I
one
try
I'm
to
doing
keep
for
it-
Starfinder, because it's basically D&D, Pathfinder in space, making up my own planet, making up my own whole like thing. And
Yeah.
I really like it. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So like in this version of this this world, he isn't that guy. He's just the guy I could say he is, basically.
And I learned it from this too, because what I was talking about there is I made it in an actual city, but there was an actual guy there, and you guys had run like a pre-gen campaign in that area, and so there was some confusion. Like, wait, I thought this guy did this thing, and so you'd be like, oh, well, this is kind of like a multiverse thing, I guess. But with the one I'm doing now, like it's completely out of the realm, and plus, it's Starfinder's pretty new, so a lot of that's not established.
Yeah. There's holes to fill.
That was a
Yeah.
cool idea.
And with as many planets as there are, it's just nobody. The planets are set up just enough to give you a little bit of information.
Life kind of hit me in the
Right. And then kind of let you extrapolate from there.
Exactly.
it worked out, and
It's the other thing I think about too. I'm gonna pause it right here at 2514. So,
Okay.
like, we had a span of probably 5 years where our personal lives were kind of rocky, and I always kind of
Yeah.
worry that if we did a show then, if that would have bled over too much into our podcast, or if it would have been good to have that. So I think like when we started it, we were both kind of like actually in a very stable position, just in life and everything in general.
Right.
So I
Right.
kind of feel like that helped us not have as much outside of the podcast stuff influencing our podcast, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense. Like, oh, so you're saying like, because, we both had, rocky, tumultuous things. And so you're saying that if we would have started earlier and then those things happened, if that would have killed the show.
Potentially killed the show, just be like, dude, I don't fucking feel like doing it because the toaster's about to fall in the bathtub.
And I'm not in it.
Or more of like, like you'd be talking about a story or something like that and be like, all I see is dark and pain in this story. Shawn, it's about an elderly woman that saved a cat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're both gonna die like my soul. Well, that's the language of sad man.
Welcome to This Week in Emo.
Welcome to this weekend. Hopefully the toaster doesn't fall this week. At 25:14, I'm gonna hit play. We got just under 5 minutes.
They all basically given up all their goods to come to an academy or like a training academy to.
I look back at that
adventurers.
adventure. It's like 90
It's a lot
pages I
easier to do that
wrote.
because the first 3 levels
Damn.
are real difficult because it's like if you're a sorcerer, it's like you're fighting a dog, you might
Right.
die.
right.
But with this, it was just more
the dog
controlled.
bites your ankle, and then you
Yeah.
fall
That
over
is
dead.
tough.
Take 1d3 damage.
I said 1d3.
Agreed.
There's no
Okay,
1d3 dice.
So, and it's kind of
Noob.
it kind of allows the people to.
Oh, you're a
yell out
new
3.
2014
guys who play
John.
since they've never played before. Give them the opportunity to kind of feel stuff out. and it's
Which
more
roll you
controlled.
1d3?
Right.
You're
also kind of gives them a chance to
1d3.
kind of bond together as a group a bit more.
Yeah, exactly. So
They
I kinda
didn't
taken
sell me
idea
that
and
die
ran
at the
with it.
store.
The campaign's kind of grown. I kind of have a general idea, but each time I write a different chapter, like it kind of changes just a little.
This was
bit.
really kind of the
But it's been a lot of fun. I'm really
the
big fan
starting point of my
UC
writing
Dungeons
stuff,
and Dragons
too.
Is just make it more of a sandbox.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because you
'Cause we
started
did-
writing adventures, and then eventually you're like, well, I want to write a movie.
yeah.
And then you wrote a movie, and then you wrote short movies, and then you filmed short movies.
Because it was episode 2 when we did Hey Zombie Bear. I was like, oh my God, this could be a movie. And wrote that in like 2 weeks.
It adds the creativity of it adds more freedom, not only for you but for the players.
And Starbucks is grateful
Enhancing the whole game as a,
Yeah, I go to
for your patronage.
I go to
like the
non-corporate
group
coffee shops, Richard.
Oh, pardon me.
They're not.
You
There's not really
bougie
that one person who's like,
motherfucker.
oh, well, that's not really 100% correct in the rules, and they're jerks about it. It's just it's a bunch of guys getting together, bullshitting, and just having a good time.
right.
Guys, crazy to think. I've been playing. It's like 2004, 2005. You got me into gaming. That's
Yeah.
14 years, almost 15 in about a year.
Where they talk
The
about
stigma flares pop up.
yeah,
Fucking
exactly.
rules lawyers.
Yeah,
And then
I'm
you
like-
end up in a toilet.
Who was it? Will Wheaton, though. He says, don't be a dick.
yeah. I that's what you get a DM like that or a GM like that. And it's that power trip thing.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm
Yeah.
the GM. My rules are the rules. It's like, fuck you.
Like,
Like if I want to do my trick attack and do a backflip acrobatic thing and I roll a natural 20, it should happen.
It's like this
Yeah.
podcast. It's a reason to get a bunch of people.
Yeah, there's
together
stuff like
and
you'll roll and be like, oh, I'm gonna roll to intimidate. It's like, did I say you could do that?
where we end up talking about.
Well,
music
can I?
and movies.
No, because you didn't ask first. It's like,
It's the
Yeah.
whole-
Well, I'm banking this 20 then, motherfucker.
Yeah, that was the thing I missed the most. Is like it's a bunch of hours just to talk about movies and games and just kind of hang out.
I have noticed that. I'm gonna pause it right here real quick. I'm at 28:08. One of the things I've noticed, I'm gonna try and stop doing it, is the computers completely kind of kills a lot of that conversation. Because when I first started,
It
playing,
does.
there was no computers. Not because it was like a rule or anything, just because people didn't have them. And once I saw like everybody having computers, it just kills a lot of that conversation because somebody's got like a movie or YouTube video or they're looking up stuff and
Yeah.
kind of kills that conversations a little bit. So
A little.
I'm gonna try and stop doing that a little bit. I mean, it's not like hurting it, but it just I feel like if I'm not doing anything specific on my computer, I get more enjoyment out of it.
No, that makes sense. Because if you have it in front of you, if something's not directly involving you at that point, you've got this thing in front of you and you're like, oh, well, just do this. And
Yeah, I'm just gonna check my email real quick. Oh, it's on Facebook. Oh, I wonder if I get this spell for this thing, what that'll do.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
then an hour goes by and you're like, wait, are we fighting? And that is, I mean, I think that kind of goes to the whoever's running the game too. Like you got to make it interactive. And one trick that I've learned is if you kind of see somebody doing that, it's not a dick thing, but just you're like, okay, well, obviously they don't feel engaged.
Right.
Having them do something specific, be like, oh, hey, Steve, do you have a profession in this or this or this? Yeah. Oh, roll this check and see what happens.
Right.
So I'm at 28:08, 2 minutes left. I'm hitting play
We'll be doing.
in the home
Heck
stretch.
yeah, so we've got basically 10 years of friendship going.
10 years at that point,
I
Richard.
don't know
Now
if
we're
you
at
realize
15.
that, but we've basically known each other for 10 full years
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Just shy of half my life I've known you.
I know, for over a
I just
third of
turned
my life.
32.
Oh, man, Richard, pause it right here. At 28:24, you just turned 32. I'm a year older than you were right now at the point we started this show.
Wow.
Yeah. I think I was 28.
And then I'm just old.
Yeah. I always forget that you're that much old. I mean, you're like 4 years older than me. It's not a bunch, but I always
Yeah.
forget that there's a little bit of a time gap. So hit and play at 28:24.
I'm in my 30s, and I'm not really sure how I'm taking.
I like to surround myself with
Well, I've got
youth.
like a year and a half till I hit 30, so I'll see how that goes.
You're gonna run through your
30's not
your
that bad.
40s in this
It's like a
podcast.
milestone. You kind of feel like you have your 20s behind you, and then it's like oh okay, now I'm an adult, and then and then like the next day, then you're like, oh, no.
Now I'm doing a podcast as an adult.
Yeah.
This was a blast.
Now I'm a big boy. I'm gonna make big boy
all the
show.
Logistics of everything works. But do you have anything else you want to talk about?
No, yeah, but we say that's the character.
I think our ending was a little
That's
tough
right.
here.
There will be
That's Rocky.
Yeah. Because we didn't have Richard's closing thoughts yet.
No, that's a good point.
So many things to talk about.
I think that came in like
I think
episode
that's
5
gonna
or
be kinda
6.
cool. Like, we've been talking for
Still
like,
pretty early,
25,
though.
30 minutes. I feel like we've just started. So
So do I. That's I thinking the exact same thing.
all right. Well,
Oh, the time just flew by.
So we've got a
I just got lost in your voice.
we also have a Gmail account, which is languageofbromance@gmail.com. Feel free to send us any suggestions on things to talk about or any comments about what we can do better or just to say hey is good as well.
And we have actually had people say, hey, that wasn't an empty thing. People responded.
Well, I guess that's all the bromance we have left for this show. So this is Shawn.
And this is Richard.
I say we eat the beaver.
And then our ending, which is the same ending since we started.
Keeping that.
It is.
So I like when we first started the show too, it's like, okay, we got to have some kind of ending, right? Like what's going to be our tagline? And
Yeah.
we both like Rocco's Modern Life.
Right.
And the scene there was Rocco is at Heifer's house, which was raised by wolves. Heifer's a cow. And Heifer finds out he's adopted. He leaves. And so Rocco, who's a wallaby, is, sitting there. And the grandpa just goes, I say we eat the beaver. And I sent that to you because I was looking on YouTube for stuff. He's like, yeah, let's try that. And it's worked for 259 episodes.
Yeah.
Which we've talked about it, and I think this will be the episode. So I think we're going to retire it. So you got to hear it there, but I think we're going to go on with something else.
That's the last one.
Yeah, so
the last one you'll ever hear.
You'll see it at the end of this episode when we tidy it up. But just some stuff I thought about, like what we've done with this podcast. So, you and I have drove to Fort Worth, Texas for a podcast movement.
Yeah.
We've been to Chicago for podcast movement. We've been to Chicago for Chicago Podfest.
Yes.
We've done a live show in Kansas City. We've done a panel in Kansas City. And I think the biggest thing that we've done is what we just recently did. We took a trip all the way to Red Bank, New Jersey.
Yeah.
For the
18 hours in a car.
Yeah, it was a fun trip. It was a long trip, but I think it was just, again, it's one of those things that we went there, we came back, and I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Oh, hands down.
We laughed the whole way there, laughed the whole way back. The whole way back was a little bit more quieter because I think we were just tired from driving and doing all the fun stuff. But and you think we met Kevin Smith. If we didn't do this podcast, we wouldn't got to meet Kevin Smith.
That's true. Yeah.
Which I think was pretty cool. So that's a little bit of my kind of, I still love doing this show. I'm still excited to see what the next few years come. Was there thunder? I don't know if you'll probably hear it. My mic won't pick it up, but
I heard
ominous. I'm like, I'm going to do this in the future. But, where was I going with that? The thunder messed me up. It's going to be sweet. And
you were talking about the outro.
Well, there's the outro too, yeah, and just with this podcast too. Like, so when we first start, like on this episode 00, I assumed that we'd probably maybe get 20, 30 episodes in before maybe we started getting some breaks in there. But I think it's really cool. We get to 52 episodes. That was kind of a goal. We do it. And we're like, oh, that's awesome. All right. Well, can we make it to 100 episodes? We make it to 100 episodes, then 2 straight years. And it's like, well, can we do 3 straight years, 4 straight years? And here we are, Richard, 260 episodes, 260 straight weeks.
Yep.
5 years of podcast. It's
That's
just
crazy.
It's just
and you look at it. Each episode runs. Some are under an hour, some are over an hour. So that's 260 hours.
Oh, at least, yeah,
of content.
And we've talked about before. Like at some point, slide these over to the kids in a flash drive, which would probably be the equivalent of like, hey, son, guess what? I was in a high school band. Here's my mixtape. It's like,
yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
old
But
man.
look, they're all on a flash drive, and they're like, "Well, I don't even know what to do with this. Do you lick it? Is that how you get the information? There's nowhere to plug it into my head, Dad.
Dad, when I put this on my tongue, it tingles. But again, I just love doing the show. I love everything about it. And I'll toss it up to you then for our Richard's closing thoughts and our 5-year anniversary episode.
Well, it's been 5 years, and we looked back on yesteryear. I'd like to think that things have improved. I'd like to think that things have started to sound better. The content's gotten a bit better. I think both of us have. I think there's definitely a trajectory you see. There's definitely a curve that we actually meet. And that's kind of cool to see. So after 5 years, Shawn, I'm done. I'm over it. This is it.
I haven't been recording since this first episode. Oh, I knew it.
None of these are actually on the internet, are they? I knew it. You've been fooling me this whole time.
It's like a Buffy episode. We wake up, we're in an insane asylum talking into, toilet paper cans.
No, I'm a podcaster. Honey, no one knows what that is.
Shawn, listen, if you say eat the beaver one more time, you're getting the blue pill. All right, I'll change it up.
So 5 years is awesome. I mean, there's, I don't want to, set challenges. I don't, at this point, I don't really want to set challenges. I don't want to say, well, now we have to do another 5, or now we have to do another year. Now we have to do another 500 episodes. Like, I've said it from the get, like, we'll go until there's nothing left to go on. Yeah. We'll go until we don't want to go anymore. And right now I'm fine with going.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat there. I think it's great. Like, we can find any kind of story, and, there's always going to be something we didn't know that we'll find out about. But as we're tidying up this Bronniversary, the 5-year, the silverware anniversary, let me do a little bit of housekeeping. Visit our website. We're at languageofbromance.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at languageofbro. Email us. We have a brand new email as well. It's bros@languageofbromance.com. Like us on Facebook. And remember, we are part, and we have been for about 4 years, 2/3, the Pod Bros Network.
Because it's the best podcast site on the internet, from what I hear.
They liked us so much that they put a ring on us. They said, "We caught you guys in your pod marriage."
Single ladies.
All right. Well, is there anything else before I close her out?
Nope. And nope.
All right. Well, that's all the Bromance we have for this show. I'm Shawn.
And I'm Richard.
And don't be a why, be a why not.
See, isn't that nice? Doesn't that feel good?
And on a high note, good. Inspirational.
Yeah. Be a why not.
If you're like, hey, why don't you eat the beaver? Like, that's pretty inspirational too.
I mean, for half of us.
I'm Nicole.
And I'm Sarah, and we are the Homance Chronicles.
The Homance Chronicles is an adult comedy podcast where we laugh like this all of the time at our real life shit. It's what happens, where we talk about everything from dating disasters
to poor choices after drinking entirely way too much.
We always drink too much.
That's a terrible thing.
It leads to awkward encounters.
Both sober and drunk, though.
True.
That's very true.
The Twilight Zone is real. It's the ultimate girl talk where we share everything. Even
everything. Butt stuff.
Yeah, all the stuff. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Just search the Homance Chronicles. And if you haven't figured it out, Homance is the girl version of a bromance. So get ready to giggle along. Tell me that you recorded it.
Homance out!